Chapter 1. The Accident and the Wedding Trap. The glass skyscrapers of the city glinted in the late afternoon sun, reflecting power, money, and the occasional billboard of Knox Emerson's empire. Fenris Nightshade had always hated those billboards. Arrogant, showy, pretentious, just like the man himself. Fenris adjusted his cufflinks as he exited his luxury sedan, Leon following behind with his usual clipboard of schedules. "Your next meeting is at 7, Leon reminded. Fenris rolled his eyes. "Please, Leon, don't sound like my mother. I already know my life is a prison." "You built the prison yourself." Details. They were cutting across a busy intersection near the cathedral when chaos broke out. A shrill scream tore through the air. A runaway bridal carriage. Yes, a literal decorated carriage pulled by white horses for some fancy wedding was barreling out of control down the cobblestone slope. The horses were panicked, the driver nowhere to be seen. And right in its path stood a trembling figure in pale silk robes, frozen in fear. "Idiot," Fenris muttered before bolting. Without thinking, he shoved the fragile-looking man aside, tackling him to the ground just as the carriage thundered past, scattering petals and horrified gasps from bystanders. The man clung to him, eyes wide, breathing fast. His pale features and soft demeanor screamed Omega, though there was something too composed, too sharp beneath those delicate lashes. "Thank you," the man whispered, voice shaking. "You saved me. Today was supposed to be my wedding." Fenris blinked. "Wedding? Then why were you standing in the middle of the road like a suicidal pigeon?" The stranger's lips trembled. I was supposed to marry Knox Emerson." At that cursed name, Fenris nearly dropped him. "What?" Leon's eyebrows twitched, and he muttered under his breath, "Of course." Still, Fenris being Fenris, sighed dramatically, dusted off his suit, and helped the fragile man up. "Fine, whatever. I'll escort you. Can't have a potential lawsuit hanging over me if the great Emerson's supposed spouse dies on my watch." The cathedral was already overflowing with luxury. Golden chandeliers, velvet carpets, flowers imported from islands Fenris couldn't even locate on a map. Fenris was ready to dump the trembling groom-to-be at the altar and escape. But when he turned, the man had vanished. Completely gone. "What the—" Before he could even curse, the heavy doors slammed shut, and the music swelled. And there stood Knox Emerson. Tall, devastatingly handsome, his aura crackled with power and danger. His obsidian eyes locked onto Fenris with such intensity that even Fenris, professional menace, master of sarcasm, felt his throat dry for a split second. "Ladies and gentlemen," Knox's voice boomed, smooth as silk but sharp as a blade, "the groom has arrived, my husband-to-be, Fenris Nightshade." Fenris nearly choked. "Excuse me, what?" Papers appeared as if by magic. Contracts, photographs, legal deals stacked in neat golden folders. Knox's lawyers lined the pews like vultures. "You signed these partnership agreements, didn't you, Fenris?" Knox said, smiling like a wolf who'd cornered prey. "Each clause ties directly to today's union. Congratulations, husband." Fenris sputtered. Those were business contracts, not marriage contracts." Knox leaned closer, whispering, "Business is marriage with me, Fenris. And I always get what I want." The crowd erupted in cheers. Leon muttered something about this being the worst soap opera he'd ever been forced to watch. Despite Fenris's very loud protests, somehow champagne was popped, rings exchanged, vows declared. Fenris tried sarcasm, tried threats, tried reminding Knox that kidnapping was illegal, but each time Knox only smiled, sliding another luxury under his nose. Private islands, multi-million-dollar mergers, a penthouse more expensive than Fenris's annual budget. Fenris hated it. He hated how much he liked it. And when the final moment came, Knox cupping his face, leaning in like the world had always belonged to them, Fenris growled, "If you bite me, I swear." Sharp teeth grazed his neck. The mark seared. The bond snapped into place like golden chains Fenris would never break. Knox pulled back, smug and adoring all at once. "Mine." Fenris's retort was cut short by the overwhelming heat of the bond crawling under his skin. He shoved Nox away, scowling furiously even as his heart thumped traitorously fast. Leon finally approached, dry as ever. "Congratulations, boss, on your marriage. Though, if you ask me, this feels less like romance and more like an elaborate trap." Fenris shot him a glare. "Thank you, Captain Obvious. Truly insightful." Nox, meanwhile, only tightened his grip on Fenris's hand, possessive and utterly triumphant. He had planned this for years, orchestrated every detail, and now his alpha was his husband, bound. And Fenris was already plotting murder, divorce, and perhaps a little shopping spree with the new black card Nox had slipped into his pocket. Chapter 2. Married life begins. Married life, Fenris decided, was hell. Not the fiery, brimstone kind. No, that would have been merciful. This was a luxury hell, where his prison cell came with silk sheets, Michelin star chefs, private jets, and an overgrown, lovesick enigma who wouldn't stop breathing down his neck. Fenris sat in the middle of Nox's penthouse suite, sprawled across an imported Italian leather couch with a scowl that could curdle milk. A mountain of shopping bags, jewelry boxes, and shiny new tech surrounded him like the spoils of a dragon's hoard. "Do you think you can bribe me into silence?" Fenris asked, waving a diamond-encrusted watch like it was a cheap trinket. "Yes," Nox replied instantly, without a shred of shame. Fenris narrowed his eyes. "You're supposed to deny it, idiot." Nox leaned down, stealing a quick kiss to Fenris's cheek, smirking when Fenris turned red with fury. "Why deny the truth? You like pretty things. I like you. This works out for both of us." "I don't like you," Fenris snapped. "Of course you don't," Nox said fondly, tucking a silk blanket over Fenris's lap as if he were a delicate treasure. "You just like everything I give you, which means, indirectly, you like me." Fenris groaned, shoving his face into a pillow. This is psychological warfare. Nox, unfortunately, was relentless. If Fenris rolled away in bed, Nox rolled right after him, caging him with those broad arms like an oversized guard dog. If Fenris tried to escape through the back elevator, by the time he reached the lobby, a limousine was already waiting, with Nox sitting inside, patting the seat next to him. If Fenris refused dinner, a world-class chef was flown in within the hour, cooking all his favorite dishes. "Stop acting like a tyrant," Fenris raged one night, pushing away yet another glittering gift box. Nox only tilted his head, amused. "I'm not a tyrant. I'm a devoted husband." His smile turned sharp. "A tyrant would have locked you in a tower. I only lock you in my arms." Fenris threw a cushion at him. Outside their little domestic battlefield, however, the world was learning quickly. Don't look at Fenris Nightshade for too long. At a gala, a young investor tried to compliment Fenris's suit. By the end of the night, the investor had mysteriously withdrawn from the stock market, his assets suddenly frozen. At a restaurant, the waiter smiled a little too kindly. He never worked in the city again. Fenris pinched the bridge of his nose. "You can't just destroy everyone who talks to me, Nox." "They weren't just talking," Nox said darkly, pulling Fenris close by the waist. "They were looking, and I don't like when people look at what's mine. You're insane, insanely in love." Meanwhile, Leon was caught in his own little drama. Theo, delicate as porcelain but with eyes that gleamed far too knowingly, had started lingering around him, bringing him tea, walking him home, smiling like a sly fox in fragile sheep's clothing. "You're wasting your time," Leon had told him sternly. "Because of you, Fenris got dragged into Emerson's lunacy. I won't forgive that." Theo only tilted his head, lips curling in a secretive smile. "And yet you're still listening to me." Leon scowled, but his ears burned red. Theo leaned closer, whispering, "You think I'm fragile, don't you? Like an omega. But I'm an enigma too, just like Nox. Only, I don't want Fenris. I want you." Leon nearly choked on his coffee. You can't just say things like that." Theo laughed softly, unbothered. "I can, because I mean it." And then, with infuriating calm, he walked away, leaving Leon to stare after him like a man who just realized he was standing at the edge of a cliff with no way back. Back at the penthouse, Fenris was once again trying to negotiate his freedom by dangling a luxury brochure in front of Knox's face. "Look, a private island in the Maldives. Buy it for me, and I'll stop calling you a stalker for one whole week." Knox raised a brow, snatching the brochure and kissing Fenris's temple. "Done. But I want interest on that deal." "What interest?" "A kiss every morning. And you stop trying to run away." Fenris's jaw dropped. "That's extortion." Knox only grinned, utterly unrepentant, as he slid the signed property deed across the table. Fenris groaned again, burying his face in his hands. "I hate you. I hate you so much." "Good," Knox said cheerfully, pulling him into his lap. "Hate me forever as long as you're here." And though Fenris muttered and complained, his hands didn't push Knox away. Because deep down, even in this luxury prison, he was starting to realize hell could be very comfortable when your captor worshipped the ground you walked on. Chapter 3. Web of Secrets. If Fenris had to summarize his life after nearly a year of marriage, it would be a tragicomedy with luxury benefits. Every day began with Knox orchestrating coincidences, so obvious they made Fenris want to throw his espresso cup at his smug face. A candlelit dinner on the rooftop? Knox just happened to be there. A private jet headed to Paris for a business summit? Knox, coincidentally, booked the seat beside him. A weekend at a secluded estate with roses planted in Fenris's favorite colors? Knox absolutely did not plan that. What do you mean suspicious? Fenris told himself he hated it. He told himself the warmth in his chest was annoyance, not affection. He told himself that his husband was still a manipulative, arrogant enigma lunatic. But then he'd catch Knox looking at him with such adoring intensity, like Fenris was the only star in his sky, and his sarcasm would crumble just a little. Of course, Fenris still tried to run away. Once he packed his bags and booked a secret flight, but at the airport, when he walked into the lounge, Knox was already waiting, sipping champagne. Another time, he tried escaping through Leon's help, but by the time he reached the getaway car, the driver rolled down the window, Knox himself smiling like a shark. And when Fenris stormed back home in fury, Knox simply scooped him into his arms and kissed his forehead. "It's almost cute," Knox whispered once. "The way you keep trying, even though your heart always leads you back to me." Fenris growled, "Shut up." But his ears burned red. Maybe, just maybe, he didn't mind being caught anymore. Meanwhile, chaos brewed in a different corner. Leon, Fenris's ever-loyal secretary, was being hunted, relentlessly courted, by Theo Lysander. Theo, all soft smiles and gentle gestures, looked like the most fragile omega in existence. But Leon now knew the truth. Theo was no fragile flower. He was an enigma, just like Knox, and a dangerously persistent one. "You should stop," Leon said one evening as Theo casually leaned against his desk, offering him homemade cookies. "Because of you, Fenris got shackled to that lunatic. I'm not about to get tangled in another obsession." Theo's eyes sparkled as he pushed the plate closer. "But you've already been tangled, Leon. Otherwise, why haven't you pushed me away yet?" Leon clenched his jaw. "You're impossible." But suddenly, Leon asked Theo why he was hiding his true self from everyone. Theo shrugged lightly, sipping his tea. "Everyone close to me knows what I am. If the world mistakes me for an omega, that's their problem. I never lied." Leon stared, caught off guard. He had expected shame or defensiveness, but Theo's calmness disarmed him completely. And after weeks of relentless flirting, persistent smiles, and Theo showing up exactly when Leon thought he could get peace, Leon finally gave up resisting. "Fine," he muttered one night, catching Theo's wrist. "But don't expect me to be gentle." Theo's answering smile was devastating. "I wasn't planning on it." Back in the empire of chaos called Fenris and Knox's marriage, things were, as always, unpredictable. It had been nearly a year now. Their companies were merging under Knox's careful hand, and Fenris was back in the business battlefield, clawing his way through meetings, sarcastic jabs, and occasional tantrums that Knox seemed to find adorable. Life was almost normal. Almost. Until one afternoon in his office. Fenris was in the middle of shredding a contract he didn't like when it hit him. The sharp wave of heat. His rut. He froze, palms sweating, heart pounding, the scent curling heavy in the air. He cursed under his breath, trying to will it down, but he already knew it was useless. And somewhere down the hall, Knox's head snapped up. He felt it, before even entering the room, through their mating bond. Without a word, he stormed down the corridor, threw Leon the car keys and barked, "Prepare the car! Cancel everything, now!" Leon blinked but obeyed instantly, while Knox swept into Fenris's office. Fenris glared at him, though his eyes were hazy, lips parted. "Don't you dare!" But Knox was already wrapping his coat around him, lifting him with ease. The drive home was chaos. Fenris cursed the entire way. Leon pinched the bridge of his nose. Theo, sitting in the back like an amused audience, whispered to Leon, "It's starting." At the mansion, Knox carefully laid Fenris on their bed, sweat on his brow from holding himself back. For a year, he had denied himself. Even in his own rut, he had locked himself away rather than force his beloved Alpha into something unwanted. And now, seeing Fenris flushed and trembling under the pull of his own rut, Knox made the hardest decision again. He kissed Fenris's forehead, whispered, "I'll be outside the room. I won't force you into anything you'll regret." He turned to leave. But then, Fenris's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. "Where are you going?" Fenris's voice was hoarse, shaky, but his eyes blazed. "Aren't you my husband? Aren't you going to claim me? Make me yours?" Knox froze, utterly stunned. His heart pounded like thunder in his chest. "Fenris, you don't know what you're saying. The rut is making you—" "Shut up." Fenris yanked him closer and crushed their lips together in a fierce, desperate kiss. His voice was rough, breaking between breaths. "I'm not asking. I'm telling you. I give you permission." For a moment, Knox just stared, trembling, as if the world had stopped. And then, the last fragile string of restraint inside him snapped. With a low, guttural sound, he finally claimed what he had yearned for all this time. Their bond flared with searing heat, their breaths tangled, their hearts pounding in unison. For the first time, Fenris gave himself willingly, and Knox poured every ounce of obsession, devotion, and love into the consummation. The night was chaos, fire, laughter, sarcasm tangled with moans, and Knox whispering "mine" over and over, as if afraid the universe might take Fenris away. And Fenris, sarcastic, stubborn, impossible Fenris, whispered back, "Idiot, I was always yours." Chapter 4. The Pregnancy and the Reveal. It had been a month since that night. The night when Fenris, in the middle of his rut, had tugged Knox's hand, kissed him with desperation, and given him permission to claim him. Everything changed after that. Fenris was still sarcastic, sharp-tongued, and infuriatingly smug, but he was also different. Sometimes he'd say something so scandalous that even Knox, the shameless, possessive enigma, would blush crimson. Fenris would then laugh like he had just discovered a new favorite game. And gods forbid anyone dared to speak about how handsome or charming Knox was in public. Fenris's sour scent would flood the air instantly, his narrowed eyes daring anyone to continue their compliments. He enjoyed the way Knox panicked every time it happened, fussing to calm him down, as if the world was going to collapse if Fenris stayed grumpy for too long. But the true shift came one morning when Fenris stood in front of the bathroom mirror, holding a small test stick, his hands trembling. Pregnant. His first reaction? Panic. Absolute, bone-deep panic. He paced back and forth, muttering curses, listing every worst-case scenario, until Knox, who had sensed something unusual through their bond, appeared. Knox froze the moment Fenris blurted out the news. Then his entire face softened. A smile so uncharacteristically tender and radiant spread across his lips. "My treasure!" Knox's voice broke as he pulled Fenris into his arms, holding him so carefully as if he might shatter. "You've given me everything I have wanted." From that day on, Nox transformed into a dragon guarding his hoard. His treasure was Fenris, and the air growing inside him. He shadowed him everywhere, fussed about his meals, adjusted his pillows, threatened the staff to be extra cautious, and nearly banned him from working altogether. Fenris, of course, called him insane, but secretly, he didn't hate the attention. The visit. Theo and Leon arrived one sunny afternoon carrying flowers in a very smug air. "Congratulations," Theo drawled, kissing Fenris on the cheek in a brotherly way before Nox could snarl. "You're glowing." "Shut up," Fenris muttered, though his ears flushed red. Then Leon, clearly dying to spill, finally confessed. "By the way, Theo and we're together now." Fenris blinked. "Wait, you're with him? This shameless flirt? This menace?" Theo grinned, wrapping an arm around Leon's shoulders, asked Fenris, "Why so shocked?" "Because you are a menace and trickster." Fenris snapped. Leon just laughed and added, "He is also an enigma, Fenris." There was a pause. Then Fenris, wide-eyed, turned to Theo. "You're an enigma?" Theo stared at him flatly. "Didn't I tell you?" "No," Fenris almost shouted. "I thought you were in Fragile Omega." Theo shrugged. "Well, I didn't hide it. Everyone close to me knows. The world just thinks I'm in Fragile Omega because of my face. Not my fault." The room descended into chaos. Leon laughing so hard he nearly fell off the couch. Fenris groaning into his hands. Theo smirking shamelessly, and Nox looking like he was 2 seconds away from murdering Theo for touching Fenris's cheek earlier. The reveal. When the laughter finally died down, Fenris leaned back against Nox, exhausted but smiling faintly. That was when Nox decided to confess everything. He told Fenris how he orchestrated the so-called accident, how he had watched him for years, how every step had been a plan. "Yes," Nox said, without shame, eyes locked on Fenris like a predator, unwilling to hide anymore. "I wanted you long before you were mine. I arranged it all. You'll never escape me. You're mine, always." The room went silent. Leon froze. Theo arched a brow, waiting for Fenris to explode. But Fenris only sighed. He stared at his obsessed, possessive, beautiful enigma husband. Then, slowly, a dangerous smirk curved his lips. "Fine," he said coolly. "But listen carefully, Nox. I'm pregnant now. And if I ever find out that you're looking at someone else..." His aura flared, sharp and suffocating, sending shivers even through the two enigmas present. "I'll chop that person into pieces. And you too." Nox, feared by the world, merciless and cold, actually stiffened. His face paled slightly. Theo blinked. "Holy," Leon muttered under his breath. "Pregnancy hormones." Fenris leaned closer, his eyes glinting with menace. "Did you hear me, husband?" "Yes," Nox answered instantly, voice hoarse but sincere, and pulled Fenris into his arms, burying his face against his neck. Theo laughed loudly. "I think I just witnessed the one man who could terrify the great Nox." And as chaos and comedy swirled around them, Fenris only smirked, feeling strangely triumphant. For the first time in his life, he felt truly claimed, and equally, had claimed Nox in return. Chapter 5. Chaos, Crowns, and Cradles. Pregnancy was an adventure, or more accurately, a battlefield. Fenris quickly discovered that being pregnant with an Enigma's child meant not only dealing with mood swings, cravings, and soreness, but also dealing with Nox transformed into an overprotective tyrant. The once cold, ruthless Enigma now shadowed him like an anxious nursemaid. "Don't lift that pen. It's too heavy. Nox, it's a pen. You're not walking to the office today. I'll carry you. I can walk, damn it. Shh, the baby might get stressed." Fenris would often snap at him, roll his eyes, and then, just to spite him, eat something spicy and laugh when Nox panicked. But there were also moments when he leaned into his husband's obsession, secretly liking the way Nox fussed over him, as if he were the most precious thing in the universe. The pregnancy journey. Cravings were bizarre. One week, Fenris demanded expensive French pastries at 3 a.m. The next, He wanted noodles from a shady street vendor. Knox would literally buy out the entire stall and have the chef escorted to their mansion. Mood swings were worse. One evening, Fenris cried over a broken shoelace. The next, he threatened to set Knox's closet on fire because he didn't like the way his husband's shirt looked on him. Through it all, Knox just smiled, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "My treasure, anything you want." Theo and Leon often dropped by, Theo constantly teasing Fenris while Leon nervously fussed. "You're glowing, Fen," Theo purred. "I'll glow your face with my fist if you don't shut up," Fenris snapped back, throwing a cushion. Leon would just sigh, muttering, "Why am I marrying this menace?" Only for Theo to grin and reply, "Because you can't resist me." The birth. Months later, chaos struck at 2 a.m. when Fenris's water broke. The mansion went into absolute panic. Staff ran everywhere. Knox carried Fenris bridal style to the car, while Fenris shouted, "Put me down, I can walk." "You're in labor, absolutely not," Knox growled, refusing to let go. Hours later, after a dramatic, exhausting battle that involved Fenris cursing, biting Knox's shoulder, and threatening to divorce him if he told him to breathe one more time, their child was born. A boy. Tiny, wrinkled, red-faced, and the most beautiful thing Knox had ever seen. Fenris, sweaty and exhausted, still found the strength to smirk. "He has my glare." Knox kissed his forehead, eyes wet. "And my heart." They named him Aelion, a name that meant eternal flame. Theo and Leon's wedding. Life didn't slow down. As Fenris adjusted to fatherhood and discovered the terrifying reality of sleepless nights, Theo and Leon announced their engagement. The wedding was a spectacle, luxurious, over the top, filled with both romance and comedy. Theo wore white with golden embroidery, grinning like a cat who caught his prey. Leon looked breathtaking, though he blushed the entire ceremony as Theo kept whispering inappropriate things in his ear. During the vows, Fenris heckled loudly, "Leon, run while you can!" The guests roared with laughter, Theo smirked, and Leon muttered, "Shut up, Fenris," before kissing his groom. The twist. Months later, during one chaotic family dinner, Leon excused himself, looking pale. Theo fussed, Fenris raised an eyebrow, and Knox narrowed his eyes. When Leon returned, Fenris asked casually, "So, food poisoning?" Leon groaned, "No, I'm pregnant." The entire table went silent. Then chaos erupted. Theo stood and kissed him dramatically, declaring, "Our love created life." Fenris nearly choked on his drink from laughter. Knox muttered, "Another one joins the chaos." Fenris leaned back, smirking at Leon. "Congratulations. Welcome to hell." Leon buried his face in his hands. Epilogue. Luxury and chaos. Life was full of office politics, billion-dollar mergers, late-night board meetings, and equally late-night diaper changes. Knox still guarded Fenris like a dragon, especially with baby Elian now stealing both their hearts. Fenris, while sarcastic and grumpy as ever, found himself falling deeper into their strange, chaotic, obsessive love. Theo and Leon juggled wedding bliss, company shares, and preparing for their own child. Theo proudly boasting, Leon groaning in disbelief. It was messy. It was loud. It was ridiculous. It was love. And as Fenris rocked little Aelion to sleep one night, Knox wrapped an arm around him and whispered, "See, I told you. You'd never escape me." Fenris smiled, tired but content. Maybe I don't want to." And for the first time in his chaotic life, Fenris realized this was his forever.